traditional companies, Mercedes-Benz saying, customer experience is the new marketing. Tesla, very much about technology innovation, but also spending a lot of time focusing on innovation and customer experience, the car buying, owning experience, equally important. And here's a nice little quote again from Ford. Customer experience has rapidly moved from an idea to an ideal to an operational mandate. You have to have it. Isn't it a great time to be in user experience? Aren't you glad you chose this, this direction? Aren't you glad to be here in this elite group of people who's making the world happen? Fantastic, isn't it? Okay, but let's not pop the champagne corks just yet. Because I think there is a challenge here for us as a discipline, which is, although customer experience may be everything that everyone's talking about, it may be the most important thing that's happening in terms of business innovation and solving global problems and all those kinds of things, very much at the heart of what's happening in the world. It's not necessarily user experience as a discipline that people look to for that. So I think this sentiment is out there. People think of user experience and they often think of very low level kind of technical details of, it's wireframes and usability and user testing and get lost in all those details and not in the vision and the capability of actually creating and inventing those experiences. I think we kind of do that to ourselves as a discipline to some extent. We're more the mechanics of the Wright brothers plane than the inventors of it in some ways. And so I think, we've got this kind of situation for ourselves. And some of it is about what can we do as individuals. I'm not worried about what we do as the discipline because I don't really care so much about disciplines. But what do we do as individuals to be innovation leaders? Right? What do we need in order to do that? And I'd argue, going back to the motorcycle analogy, it's one thing, it's focus. Where do we put our attention? It's how do we think about the things that we do. There are probably some new tools, and I'll talk a little bit about that, some different ways of thinking about things that we don't necessarily do, but a lot of it's just about where we place our focus. So if you look at those billion-dollar startups, where do they place their focus? There's really a couple of things that they're focused on all the time. They're focused on value, and they're focused on product. They're thinking about opportunity, they're looking for customer needs that are unmet. They're looking for unused resources that they can do something with, technology capabilities, data, unused resources of various sorts. They're always thinking about value and thinking about opportunity. And the other thing they're thinking about is product. They're thinking about execution. How do I get something out there quickly that I can learn something from, and that I can build on, and that I can grow from? You look at the history of all those, of any one of those companies, grab one at random, you're almost always going to find that story. They got excited about a technology, they said, what can I do with this? Let's find a user need that it meets. Or they got excited about a problem that people had, and they said, what can we do, taking things that are out there and build on that to do something about it? And they said, how quickly can we get something out there and work with it? So it's that innovation mindset. Think value, think product, and I think so for us as UX practitioners, think bigger than what we may normally think of as UX. So I want to kind of go through each of these a little bit. So yeah, I think value, I've already said, if innovation is a creation of new value, then the thing that we are making is the value. What do we know about the value of the things that we're making? So one of the things to kind of step back on that, I think this is one of the areas where we're not particularly good as UX designers. Most designers are not very good at business, right? It's not what we often the reason that people become designers is because they said, I don't like all that number stuff, so I'm going to go and do something that's more. I draw really nicely. I think in pictures. I have this creative spirit. I want to see a spreadsheet. But if we do that, we've knocked ourselves right out of the picture of innovation in a way. And it's not super complicated. So this is a business model diagram. I know you can't read the details of it. It's a business model canvas. How many of you are familiar with this little tool? Oh, that's nice. Okay, quite a few people. But quite a few people not raising their hand. But I'm glad to see that. And I see it more and more. This is a really simple tool that I think everyone should add to their toolkit. This is something that I now do on any project that I undertake, any new pitch that I engage in, any project that I sit down and work on, it takes 10 minutes once you've learned how to do it. And it's really simple. Basically, you have two halves of it. You have a product, how you create value, and you have a market, how you extract value. And I'm going to run you through a little example of this. My intention is not to train you into this, but just to entice you with the simplicity and the power of this tool. We're going to talk about Kelly's Lemonade Stand. So So Kelly's a 12-year-old girl. She's just as cute as can be, super entrepreneurial, very excited about the world in front of her. Don't you hate those kids, man? They're so energetic, and I love them. You know, it's great. People are just they're out there. They're trying to do something really exciting. This is the world we live in today. 12 is probably too old. She's probably 9. And she's got a lemonade stand. She sets it up in the park near her house, and she sells lemonade. So what's the product she's got? She's got cold, tasty, natural lemonade on the go. Fantastic. It's homemade, so here's her value proposition. It's homemade, and she's just really cute. And you know that's why you buy from somebody. So I was walking through, I was in Hong Kong, and I was on Llama Island. I was walking along, and there's this kid sitting there with a little set of cupcakes, and he's got, homemade cupcakes for sale. I had to buy one. I didn't need a cupcake. I didn't want a cupcake, but I just thought that's so great that he's doing it. So that's half her value proposition. So this is what she's doing. She has, her customers are park visitors. She doesn't sell online. She doesn't distribute into stores. She's not doing anything else, just park visitors. That's who she connects with. Her relationships are personal. Again, she doesn't have salespeople. She doesn't have a network of agents, but she could. And this is where the business model becomes interesting. But right now, that's what she's doing. So you understand the relationships she has. The channel she works with, she has some flyers that she puts up in the park, so people say, hey, this way for lemonade. She has the booth sales where she interacts with people, and she has kellyslemonade.com, a one-page website where she tells stories from the park and tells people when she's open and announces her new flavors, pink lemonade. And what she makes her money from is lemonade sales and the tip jar. Right? Really straightforward. You understand what's going on there. Then over here on the other side, what does she do to create that value? She makes lemonade. She does a little bit of marketing, and she stands there and sells. Her key resources to do that, she has her ingredients, her salespeople, her brother helps out sometimes, and her booth and equipment. And who are her partners? Well, municipalities. She has to have the right to sell in the park. So she's got a license for that. Okay, that's a partner that she's got to work with, a dependency. And her suppliers, the farmer's market where she gets these beautiful lemons to make this fantastic lemonade. Cost structure, she's got her ingredients, her equipment, her salaries, paying her brother, and her flyers. And that's the whole business. They're on one page. You can do this with anything. Do this with IBM. Do this with Apple. Do this with the product you're working on at any level, from the product to the business to the company. If you understand this, then you can understand why you're doing what you're doing, and you can also become value hunters. Now, if you're a value hunter for Kelly, let's say that her goal is to grow dramatically. You can see all sorts of opportunities. I already alluded to some. Right now, she's limited by her personal relationships. What if she took kellyslemonade.com and started to extend that? What else could she extend this cute homemade lemonade value proposition into? Where else could she go with that? Could she extend that beyond park visitors? Maybe park visitors start to go to a local restaurant nearby. Maybe she could be selling through that. There's all these ways you can start to see how you can grow that, and it gives you a really simple model for testing some of those ideas out. And whatever you're working on, you can begin to contribute to that value from your position. And this is really all that Uber did. Right? Uber was a couple of guys sitting around complaining about how hard it is to get a taxi in San Francisco Bay Area. And they said, well, I got a great idea. We'll buy a car, we'll hire a driver, we'll get a bunch of our friends together to share the costs, we'll build an app, and then we'll share that car and driver. That's all they plan to do. But then they said, you know what, we could scale this. What if we had a bunch of cars and a bunch of drivers? A lot of people would be interested in this, but we don't want to go out and buy a fleet of cars. We don't want to go into that kind of business. They were digital guys. So they said, well, what if everybody with a car could be one of our drivers? And now they've looked at the other side of the business model, and they've rethought those different, you can see how this kind of fills in the blocks, and rethought those different elements. And $40 billion evaluation later, that's how you turn an idea into something that has explosive impact on the world. Just to show you that it's not just about traditional business, if that's not your thing, if you work for an NGO or a charity, this is something we did at Brilliant Basics for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is a WASH cost calculator. So WASH stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene. And it's basically in the developing world, very common case that these kinds of facilities are built, and a year later the NGO that was so proud that they got it built comes back and looks, and what they see is that the things just falling apart. Nobody's supporting it. Because nobody thought about the cost of supporting the ongoing needs of that facility. So the wash cost calculator provides a simple way for people to calculate what it's going to actually take to maintain this thing, and to put that in the hands of people so that they're not the victims of a fantastic idea that dies a few months later. Rather, invest differently, change the shape of the installation so that it's something that's sustainable and supportable. Same kind of idea. So if we're going to be value hunters, and we're going to be looking across the business model and thinking about where we can look for value, one of the first things you want to do is find the problem. What can you solve? What can you fix? What can you change? What can you improve that will really make a difference? And this is Kevin Systrom from Instagram talking. It's about a 3-minute video that's really worth looking at about that question of finding the problem. How do you find the thing that you need to solve? And then he actually goes on and really kind of describes the whole user experience cycle. Interesting, given that, again, not a UX guy, but interesting how he thinks through it in that. So I'll just let this one.
Always thought, like, you're faced with these problems that people have, right? You assume that you know exactly what you're going to tackle, and the hard part is finding that algorithm, right? The hard part is scaling that solution. It turns out, thank you, Mike, that the hard part is actually finding the problem to solve. Solutions actually come pretty easily for the majority of problems. Not for every problem, but for the majority of problems. And in our case, what we did was, when we sat down and we were deciding to work on Instagram, what we did was we wrote down the top 5 problems people have with mobile photos. Because we wanted to build a product that solved problems. We didn't want to just build a cool app to look for a problem that people had. We wanted to do it the other way around. So what we did was we listed out these 5 problems. And I remember the top 3 that we circled. Number 1 was that mobile photos don't look so great, right? Like, we've all had that experience. You're seeing the sunset, you take a snapshot, and it looks like, washed out, you can barely see the sun, etc. And we were like, that's like the major problem we want to solve. Number 2 was that uploads on mobile phones take a really long time. So we were like, what could we do around that? And we were like, well, maybe if we start the upload way before you're done even editing the photo's caption. And what if we size down the photo just to fit perfectly on the screen, but nothing else? And that's like the small little problem and solution that it turns out really delights people, because they press done entering their caption, it's already been uploaded, right? The third problem was that we really wanted to allow you to share out to multiple services at once. We felt like, should you have to make the decision of taking a photo with the Facebook app, the Twitter app, so on and so on, or should you just take it in one place and distribute it to many places at once, right? Those top 3 problems allowed us to really hone in on what solution we wanted to build. And that's really what Instagram became. I also wanted to say that, once you have those top problems that you want to solve, you need to verify that they're actually the ones that people have. And really the way to do that is get your product in front of people very quickly and test that hypothesis. I think too many people wait a long time, and I'm going to talk about this a little later. Too many people wait a long time to see whether or not what they're working on is actually the problem people are having.
Really, I just think that, I could just sit down and let Kevin talk. I mean, he's smarter than I am. He's richer than I am, and he's got some really nice simple ways of thinking about going from product to going from problem to product. One other thing I want to talk about in terms of value. Again, I think it's something that we're maybe getting better at in UX, but that we haven't been particularly good at, is storytelling. And Sudhindra talked about this a lot, and again, I have a lot of influence from safety around storytelling and storyscaping and the importance of that. Something I've been talking about back when I was a university lecturer, before this whole digital part of my life started. But storytelling is really important in terms of value. What ideas get built and get funded? Are they the best ideas? Not always. Right? Sometimes the best ideas don't get funded, they don't get built. It's the ideas that have the best story, the ideas that are the best articulated. And again, think of your own experience as designers, the number of times you've known you were doing the right thing and you couldn't convince the stakeholders the direction to go. That storytelling aspect of your job is as important as the design. Unless it gets built, unless somebody buys into it and takes it forward, it doesn't do anything for you. So storytelling, just a little analogy here. Did anybody recognize this single clip from a video that went viral about a year ago? Okay, a few people recognize it. So don't tell the story because you'll ruin my bit. We've got this guy playing violin in a New York train station, And he plays for about an hour and he earns about 32 bucks. Not a very exciting story if we leave it at that. But if I tell you that man playing violin in the corner is Josh Bell, and he played that night in Carnegie Hall and he earned about $100,000 for an hour of playing, and that he's playing on a priceless Stradivarius violin, it changes the flavor a little bit. Right? Same product, same music, same quality, $100,000 versus $32, it's the story. It's putting on your best clothes, showing up to a beautiful concert hall, the hubbub, the buzz of the crowd, the orchestra warming up, the stage, the tuxedos that everyone's in on stage. It's that whole thing that gives it the value. This guy in a baseball cap playing in the train station just doesn't have the same value. So it's how can you tell the story around the value of what you're building and what you're designing. And here's a really simple tool for helping to think about your value proposition. Again, this is one of these things that whatever you're working on right now, think about, can you articulate this? And if you can, great. This is a good way to talk about what you're actually doing and hone in on it. And if you can't, you might want to stop what you're doing and take a minute to articulate this, because you don't know why you're building what you're building otherwise. So, our product service, whatever, the product or service, and I did the same thing, very much as it's very same thing. We'll help consumer user. Can you identify who you're going after, what their conflict is with the problem? Is there a problem that you're solving? Because of benefit delivered. So what is it that you're doing, solving the problem, and that's what you're actually building. And again, it's a really nice, simple thing that can be a platform for then telling a story of value around what you're doing. So the second thing, we've talked about thinking value, then we're talking about thinking product. And the two go very much together. The biggest thing about thinking product is it's about execution. So if I have a choice between, I've got one team over here that's got great ideas, and I've got another team over here that's got great execution, I can pick one of them to be my team. Which one am I going to pick? I'm always going to pick execution, right? If I execute well enough, long enough, hard enough, the ideas will come. And everybody's got, how many people in here have a world-changing idea written down in a notebook somewhere? Come on, be honest. You've thought about it, you said, I know I could do it. How many of you have seen something out there in the market that you went, I thought about that 5 years ago? Yeah. Doesn't matter until you execute. So this is a great thing from Derek Siebert, talking about how ideas are just multipliers, right? The quality of your idea definitely can up the value, but only multiplied times the execution. So a brilliant idea with no execution, 20 bucks. I'll give you 20 bucks for that. A brilliant idea with brilliant execution, welcome to stardom. Anywhere in between, I'd rather move up the execution ladder, and of course the better ideas are better, but only if you execute, right? And I think, again, we tend to get very wrapped up in our process. Something I think we're getting better at as a discipline, definitely. We tend to get very wrapped up in our process. It's only, even more than the development teams, I find UX teams are often saying, we can't do that until we've done this. We have to do these steps, and then we can take that thing forward. We haven't done our personas properly yet, so we can't start talking about the design. We get really wrapped up in that. And it's, again, important to learn all those skills and all those tools and know how to use them. But don't get wrapped up in the process. It's about the product. And I think this is where Lean is really good. Again, love hearing that there's a Lean session running today talking about how to do Lean UX. Because I think it's absolutely critical. It's absolutely the only way to be moving forward is to drive things more this way. This really simple thing to make check. And the way we think about this at VB is, we'll start with some insights, really quick, rapid customer research, not to try and understand everything in the world there is ever to know about people who listen to music on the go or whatever our target audience group is, but just enough insight so we can start to form some hypotheses. And we used to call these requirements as if they came from a magical list somewhere, but what they really are is hypotheses, right? You say, I have a belief that this feature will solve this problem for this person. That's a hypothesis. And it immediately sets you up in a mindset of testing, right? So if I have a hypothesis, then I want to prove that wrong, because it's cheaper to prove it wrong now than it is later. So I want to start thinking about how do I check that? How do I test that? And if it is wrong, how do I move it forward? So the first thing you have to do is sketch something out, get that prototype so that I can put it in front of people, test it, gather some more insights, and keep going around the cycle. Ideally, at the same time, I'm spiking technology solutions so that as this becomes more and more real and moves from paper to prototype to to something that's actually coded and integrated, that we're testing that that's actually going to work, so we don't come up with great ideas that then blow up the timeline and all that sort of thing. And we document what we have to. And this doesn't mean that you don't use those tools, right? If I'm in the middle of sketching and I think I'm getting lost here, I might back off and do a traditional flow diagram. Totally makes sense. But I don't say, okay, first I'm going to do this, and I've got to do these flow diagrams, and then I've got to do this, and I've got to do this. Flow diagram may not be required at all. It may be that I'm just sketching this thing up. But I have those tools. And your power as UX professionals is that you have a toolkit that you can pull out and you know when to use it. But don't become slaves to it. Focus on the product. But that experimentation mindset is, again, something we should be really good at. It's one of those tools that if we are looking down the track and not focusing at our feet, we have these amazing tools for experimentation. And experimentation is how, again, take another example, Airbnb became a $10 billion company instead of a kind of nice idea that didn't go very far. So Airbnb came out, started putting rooms up on the web, started recruiting people to have their rooms available for rent, and stalled. And they couldn't figure out why they weren't getting any more bookings. And what they realized was they looked at the site and they said, these rooms look terrible. If you've ever tried to take a picture of a room, it's not very easy to do. If you don't have good equipment and you don't know what you're doing as a photographer, it's easy to make any room look really terrible. And so what they did was they went out to their best, and Airbnb had this philosophy of they were going to build an entirely online business. They didn't want to touch anything physical. They didn't want to break out of that. They wanted everything to be online, touchless, really simple. That was their whole, their DNA was all about that. They were probably more interested in that than they were in accommodation. And so it was really hard for them to do this experiment. But they said, okay, let's hire some professional photographers, go out in the most non-scalable way possible, right? We're going to go out with a professional photographer ourselves and take pictures of some of our best properties in New York. Bookings went through the roof. So they did an experiment, they figured out what the problem was, and now they have a digitally touchless network of professional photographers taking pictures of their best properties, and lots of online tips for people to take pictures of their own properties where they're not the high-end properties. And now if you look at Airbnb,